Hello and welcome everyone to our SPARKS inaugural meeting. So great to have you all here. All right, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. So again, thank you all for being here for our inaugural SPARKS session. My name is Lauren. I work with Center for Process Studies and in education and youth programs. And Jay and I will be your facilitators for this session. So first, before we get started, we want to tell you all a little bit about who we are. SPARKS is an arts collective dedicated to exploring process-relational experience through creativity and the arts, as well as cultivating a world grounded in compassion, justice, and sustainability. This collective is rooted in the transformative potential of process-relational thinking and inspired by Alfred North Whitehead's concept of creative advance into novelty. We aim to foster a vibrant community filled with aesthetic imagination, participatory practices, and authentic connection by offering our creativity as sparks that kindle change, ignite possibility, and light pathways towards a flourishing world. In these interactive sessions, we will be exploring process-relational experience through our artistic expressions. We will begin with a presentation from our featured artist, followed by an interview in which we will also take questions from the audience. And then we will have a participatory creative arts activity. Today, we will be exploring an embodiment practice based on Kaeti's art and social presencing theater with a focus on the hands and the gestures of the hands. So this is an interactive session. We invite you to share your spark and inspire one another with your reflections, your questions, and your conversations. Throughout the session, we encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions, and we will do our best to bring those into the interview. Also, please use the chat as a resonance chamber by sharing keywords or phrases that resonate with you. And we will bring these into the creative arts activity. So if you hear something that Kaeti says during her presentation or during the interview, something that resonates with you personally, or you feel like it's of universal importance, go ahead and put that into the chat thread, and you'll see how it weaves into a collective poetry. So also, if you have not already done so, be sure to join our community space on Mighty Networks, where we will continue the conversation after the session. This is also where we will be sharing our creative responses and our art. And we'll make sure and share that link afterwards if you don't have it. So today, our featured artist is Kaeti MacNeil. Kaeti is an experimental animator, painter, and designer. Her work explores the intersections of perception, becoming, and consciousness. The short film that we will see today is Carasoul. It won Best Animated Short at the Artists Forum Festival of the Moving Image in New York City and has been featured in the Science New Wave. Kaeti's art draws on cognitive science, process philosophy, and art history to explore how intangible experiences such as memory, sensation, and imagination take on visual and spatial form. So thank you all again for being here with us. And we are going to turn this over to Kaeti to share her presentation with us.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I'm thinking we will begin with watching the film. It's 2.5 minutes long, and then afterwards I'll speak a bit about what went into making the film, both artistically and conceptually, and then we'll move into the interview.
Thank you, Jared. Before I share my own screen, I'll speak a bit about how I made the film. So I used digital color, and also I did stop motion painting. So you can see here that on this black part, this was the opening scene where the paint drips in, and then I painted over and began creating the character. So this is a method of stop motion where I paint, I take a photo, and then I digitally manipulate it. So you can see I also used a green screen. So I painted green paint and then painted each brush stroke coming out, taking photos. And then this is a scene you might remember. And then this is the scene where it gets overtaken before the hands emerge. So that's a few of the techniques that come into the film. And then I will share this. This is the poster. So this was a film that I made in 2022 and began sharing out into film festivals. It was actually my BFA thesis film. And so as part of the development, I went through and I created a 24-inch by 48-inch oil painting. And so this was the character study to develop the film, where I considered, you know, what is my own understanding and experience of my soul? What is that as a whole? What is it as parts? What is that in the process of life? A lot of it is, you know, what are these intangible feelings that aren't visible either to me or to others, and how do I depict those in a visual form? And so that's where I began developing these into different parts, trying to find definition. And so on the left is the character study, and then on the right is a salon of images. And so these were different things that in the notes and the development of the film, I made lots of textures that I used. I divided and also re-synthesized the concepts. So I have here a video. One of the things about this character study is I included mirrors, because when a viewer comes up to the painting, it will reflect them as well. And so it's, you know, it's an interactive painting in the sense of, as much as I can perceive and self-reflect or have a self-reflexive consciousness with the Carasoul, the person who walks up to the painting can experience that themselves as well. So I'll get into a bit of our the icons that are in the film, and this is part of the activity with social presencing theater. So within the film, you see coming into being all of these different parts of the soul, and it begins with just the body that starts dripping in and forming at the beginning. The torus is the heart, all of the vital organs that you have that are like the powerhouse making you alive. The circulations are the electric circulations of the nervous system, the blood of, you know, the veins. The aura is all of these fields, whatever names you want to give to them, whether they affect your relationship with space, your relationship with others, you know, all of your, how you present yourself, you feel these different things. The 4D bodies is very much aligned to objective immortalities.
And so you can see that in this center body, there are other bodies all around it. So in each of these actual occasions, when they perish, that is then just held in memory. And so that is these memory bodies as the four-dimensional bodies. And so then in concrescence, when the many become one and are increased by one, they all come together and then go apart and another one exists. And the Carasoul is like the mind's eye. It's the visualization that you can do. And so to an extent, it's kind of the prehensions, kind of the subjective forms, however you are perceiving. I'm a visual thinker. So for me, a lot of everything that takes place internally has a visual form. And so I put this in the Carasoul, which is a pun also for a head soul. So it's all of that visualization. And then we get a bit more into what to me is the lures and what is more of the physical prehension. So the shadow hands is everything that is pulling from the past, pulling from that past actual world and pulling things up back into that moment of concrescence and making them, available again. And the future hands is what's reaching out into those pure potentials. What is, going to be novelty? What is possible? And so that is what you see in the film goes and has that, I guess, superject that it's bringing into itself in that moment of concrescence that we see. And then the whole, because it's greater than the sum of its parts. I will stop my sharing and we can lead into our interview.
Well, I don't know if interview is the right word because I'm so stunned by what you've done, and it's really so marvelous. And I feel that my questions are too simple for you, Katie, but I'll ask them anyway and give others a chance to respond as well. So I think I've seen the video maybe 4 times, 5 times, and every time it's a little different. And tonight it was especially powerful for me. I see it with Whiteheadian eyes, as shaped by process philosophy. So I'm going to kind of ask 3 different kinds of questions, and I'll give you my response, and then we'll open it up and see if others would also like to share question by question. So I'll go for the first one first. If you're familiar with Whitehead's philosophy, and you don't need to be, but if by chance you are, there are certain ideas in his philosophy that may come to your mind as you watch the video. And I'll just name some that came to my mind. The first is obviously becoming, the very notion of process. And I know that's kind of built into the medium, but this is a very motional or moving video. You get a sense of motion from all that you depict. The second is prehending. And as some of you may know, prehension is Whitehead's word for feeling the presence of something else. Feeling the presence of something else. I think you especially sense that with the hands as, in a way, reaching out to feel the presence of something else tactilely. I think you also feel it through emotions, subjective forms. The emotions, too, are, in a way, feeling the presence of maybe your own soul, maybe the world. A third, and this is the mood that I got from this, but others may get a different mood. I got a mood of yearning for satisfaction. And so there was a spirit of yearning in this. And maybe you remember in every moment of experience in Whitehead's philosophy, there is indeed a yearning for satisfaction. That's the word he uses. A subjective aim for satisfaction. I felt that. There was also a self-creativity amidst the yearning. So it wasn't, the figure was not controlled by the yearning in a way. The figure was creating itself in and from the yearning. That's what I felt. Finally, multiplicity. and particularly in the, well, really everywhere. I mean, in the vision of the world map, when you sense the kind of deep multiplicity, and then in the image of the whole at the end, how the figure is composed of a multiplicity, a many that become one. So those were phrases that came to my mind as I watched this. Let's open it up. Let's do a gallery view, Jared, if you don't mind, and let's see if anybody else would like to say, yeah, here are some words that came to my mind, uh, as shaped by process philosophy or just as shaped by your own life, whatever that may be. What did you feel and see as you watched that?
I mentioned the deep multiplicity and that emergence of flowing emergence, and that's what stood out for me, is that there was a continual flowing and becoming, as you've opened with, but it was emergence into a greater becoming throughout. I mean, it was never static, and that's what resonated within me. Obviously, the colors and everything else. So your mind's bouncing around here and there. So I couldn't say that there's a linear narrative line. It was different things would pop in and out throughout, and I think that was part of the purpose. Is that there were always every frame was bubbling with different possibilities, and it moved in a certain direction of becoming, that it was never complete, but there was a real beauty in it.
Bubbling with possibilities. Now that's a nice phrase.
Thanks.
Jeannie.
Yeah.
Well, I did not know what this was about. It's like I want to watch it again now that I have more information about it. But so as I started watching it, it felt so personal. Like I was feeling the experience of being the cell coming into existence. I mean, my heart was racing, my gut was clenched. I mean, I was like, I don't know what this is about, but I feel like I've done this before. Um, it was so powerful, and there was nothing of my mind that was influencing the somatics of that because I did not know what it was about. I really want to watch it again.
Thank you. I can share the link to watch it again. Yeah.
I really do.
Mhm.
Sounds like it was echoing like a cellular level for you.
It really was. It was so personal. I mean, it was so personal.
Wonderful. Great testament for you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you. I created the film before I found process philosophy, and it, to me, process philosophy described a lot of what I have been depicting. And so I think Jay and you all have made a lot of good points about what is happening in the film from that perspective. It is very personal, but it's also beginning with that internal becoming. And then when those hands start emerging, that is when it reaches out, and then it does eventually connect with others. And I, like all of you, you're exactly what I was aiming for when I was developing the film.
When the hands started happening, I started calming down, like I wasn't alone. There was a sense of a connectivity that image brought to me. And then, yeah, I didn't feel alone at that point.
Anybody else have a comment? This is kind of the first question. What feelings, ideas came to your mind as you were watching that?
Yeah, this was beautiful. I really loved watching it. I would also love to watch it again. A couple of things came to mind. I really loved the sort of zooming out, and I'm really interested in sort of the relationship between scales of existence. And so I really got that impression here, where there was the sort of, we start in the sort of micro perspective and then kind of zoom out to what feels like sort of a universal or cosmic perspective. And there feels like a lot of relationality in that process of zooming in and out. And it also really got me thinking about how Whitehead really grounds his philosophy in creativity as the sort of like primordial energy that is propelling the universe. And I really felt that creativity, obviously because it's art, there is creativity by nature, but there, it felt like a very creative, I guess, foundation to all of our existence and to our beingness. And that really felt alive and very present and active. I loved it. Thank you.
The second question for Katie, I'm curious about your process of composing it, your own process of creativity. And Katie, this is a very simple question, but you know how some poets will say, I didn't write the poem wrote itself through me. And so there can be a sense that there's a dream being realized through you, but you're not the sole agent. And so in that context, I want to turn to you. How much of creating this felt from your perspective conscious and intentional? This is something I want to do and I will do it. And how much felt like you were being prompted, guided, moved by something other than you? And by the something other, that can be memories, that can be the world itself. Yeah. Can you take that question and run with it for a little bit?
Yeah. I think it's, to me, those two perspectives work together because it's conscious and intentional because it's my BFA thesis and I have 8 months to make it and I have to figure out how I'm going to achieve this. But then the actual content of it was something that seemed to flow on its own. And it began with me just writing out a bunch of notes and diagrams that, like you said, like memory or thoughts or ideas, it's like, what is everything I know about this topic, these experiences, what I understand at this current moment in time? Like, what do I know? And then from there, I'm like, I could start seeing visuals of what the film could look like. And then I began drawing thumbnails. And then I'm putting the thumbnails together in a film. And then at the same time, I'm going through my courses where it's like, okay, now I have to present, the animatic, I need to present these things. And so I need to meet those deadlines. And so to an extent, I was able to have like, here's the inspiration coming, here's the content, here's how I can meet what is like an objective deadline and put it all together. For it, I did develop this kind of unique experimental animation. That's what I was studying. And so I combined the stop motion painting, which was like a top-down camera setup. And then I combined it with using the program Toon Boom Harmony, which is a lot of hand drawing for the animation instead of classic paper. And it was an extremely intuitive process because I was just like, I know what I want it to look like in my mind. How do I get all of my materials to actually achieve that? And then working through that and then having it just slowly form. And so I think part of it that does create an intensity of feeling is that it all is one take. And it is that one take over those different scales. And so it is just a very like slow process of growth from something small to big all in one take.
Do you feel like you are in control of that process? Complete control, partial control, no control? How would you put that?
I think in the sense of how often it can be that an artist feels they don't have control and as a result don't create anything, I felt in control in the sense I was able to create what I was seeking to create to end up ultimately with a film. And so I think it's something where the details come out surprising or intuitively, but the intent and the control is there to like, I'm going to sit down and make it happen. And so it is a balance to me with that. I think one of the parts that was like potentially the least conscious was the music, because I had done the whole film and then it's like, what does the soundtrack sound like? And that was very intuitive of just like, I used only breath and voice. So all of the sounds in there are edited in some way to be a sound effect, with the exception of the match at the beginning. And so that was a very like intuitive approach to it, is just what are the sounds that I think are appropriate for this moment.
Yeah, that breath was very powerful. I'm taking that was your breath. Was that your breath?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So questions on Kaeti's process. Anybody want to add a different kind of question or yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to build on that, Katie. So, with the work that I do with students and the arts, as facilitators, we often talk about how we're holding the space, right? We hold the space, but we let the students become, right? We're encouraging them through this gentle sort of structure that is more organic, right? And then they get to emerge because of that safe space and encouraging space, and like the perfect amount of pressure, which is always adjusting. And I felt like I was hearing that in what you were just describing. As an artist, it's more of, it's not like we wouldn't really use the word control, right? It's more of like this participatory experience of how do I hold the space well so that it can come emerge and come into being. If maybe you want to speak to that at all.
I think that's a great way to articulate it. Particularly, it's like, that day I make space for myself to then make the art emerge. And it's something where, yes, I feel in control, but at the same time, what emerges is not fully, I know exactly what this is ahead of time. It is like a dual process in that sense. But yeah, I hadn't fully considered it like this before, so thank you both for these questions.
This is Rolla again. It's when I look at your work, it's a developmental journey. You're sort of contained in what Vygotsky calls the zone of proximal development, and in that arc of your own creative development, now you're finished with it. You're looking back. Are you able to articulate some of those pieces where, oh, I didn't see this or that, where you can construct a clearer vision of your own developmental stages, so to speak, in this work?
Yes, I didn't write anything about what was going on in the film until after it was completed. I had no like articulated language way to talk about the film until afterwards. And I wrote like an artist statement afterwards. And then once I found you guys, I had the blog interview with Kat Reeves. And that was another step of like, oh, I can see more what I created here. But as I was creating it, there was no like, I can write an essay about this before I've made it.
So did that mentoring or that conversation with Kat, who's we all love, who know her, did that facilitate some movement in certain ways?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I delved deeper into process philosophy and I started a second film to take it a little bit further than this first film has. The next steps beyond what this film depicts.
And those weren't really recognized before that conversation?
No.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
So I was wondering what happened in the interactions with the support people that and facilitating people, teachers and all that you were having while you were doing it. What kind of influence was that having on you?
Yeah, I had 3 different advisors. One was a stop motion artist himself, and so he was focused a lot on my technique. Another, she was a writer, and so we did try to, flesh out how I can write about my work, but that was a later stage. And another was a bit more critical. He was not a fan of the pun title, but I stuck with it. and another was very high concept, and he very much appreciated what I was making and the vision of this film. And we had discussions that were about, you know, those types of what is the philosophical, you know, work that I'm putting into this, which at the time I didn't have too much in depth, but I knew I was trying to create something.
So there were moments that you had to reach within to know what you were willing to fight for, and other things you were willing to say, that's fine, we can let that part go. You had that experience while you were doing it.
Yeah, they weren't parsing apart or editing for me. It was very much like, this is going to be my vision, and how do I create that? And so that was part of the program that I was with, where we were an experimental animation program rather than one where it's and so their aim in that program is to develop filmmakers. And so they want you to have your unique vision, your own understanding, rather than this is what, you know, you're going to get hired at Cartoon Network for, type of thing.
Katie, Ivy has a question. Yes, Ivy.
Yeah,
Or
Katie, I
comment.
have a question for you since we are now asking about the influence. When I watch the film, I see lots of nature's form and shape and wisdom, you know, in it. And even like just that figure, you know, has this very ecological shape, right? Looks like a little bit like a carrot, and, you know, with the leaves around, and then the shadow hands. Before hearing your explanation, I thought, you know, that's like our roots coming out, you know, from the deep, and then embracing. And in the end, when you zoom out, we see, wow, all these beings resting, dwelling on this planet Earth. And that really feels reassuring. Yeah. So I wonder, you know, how nature has played a role in mentoring your creative process into this beautiful film.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as part of my development of the film, I researched a lot of the art history of how higher dimensions are depicted. And they're always these cubes, and they're very rectilinear. And I'm like, but human bodies are not rectilinear. They are organic. They're organic shapes. Nature has all of these flowing shapes. So higher dimensions make sense to be these things. The full title of the film is Carasoul, A Portrait in Nth Dimensions. And so this was part of the work. And so in it, I did depict, like, here's these organic veins, and that type of shape is repeated throughout nature. I have those squiggles, which are those wavelengths, and that again is something throughout nature. And I aim to have a lot of these the organic forms. I'm very inspired by the research into plant consciousness and what's possible there, and those types of, you know, that to me is part of there is something more that we don't fully know in the world around us that's going on. And that was part of depicting these things in visual form, is there is more to consciousness than we currently know, and that is beyond the human body as well.
Katie, I'm going to turn to the third question now. And just for everybody present, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the philosophy of Whitehead. And like I said, you don't need to be, but there's a religious side to Whitehead's philosophy. Actually, there are several religious sides, but one of them speaks of a lure, L-U-R-E, a kind of beckoning presence that's within the whole universe. It's within each person. It's within every plant. It's within every animal. It's a cosmic lure toward creative becoming. And in one of his books, he uses the word God to name that. In another of his books, he uses the word eros with an uppercase E to name that. So you name it as you will, but there's a cosmic lure. That's one religious side of Whitehead's thought, or spiritual side. Another side, he also speaks of a kind of cosmic receptacle. He also calls it a harmony of harmonies, in which the universe lives and moves and has its being. So the whole universe is inside a kind of cosmic consciousness that is itself a receptacle for everything, everything. And he thinks that that receptacle is infused with something like love, something like empathy, feels the feelings of each and all. So you've got the lure and you've got the receptacle. I was wondering, do you see your film as pointing toward, or pointing toward things like that, a cosmic lure or a cosmic receptacle, or both?
Yeah, I think in the sense it's pointing toward it, that is what I'm exploring in my second film that I'm currently working on, is this primordial and this consequent nature. That was beyond what this first film could
I see.
comprehend. But it is something I've been exploring in the relation to the individual character, and then as I'm able to animate beyond that individual character, how do I depict, this primordial, this consequent? What is their relationship to, individuals and beyond? That is what I'm currently exploring.
So would you say that this film is more psychological and the next film is more cosmological? Or I don't really even like the way I just put that, but how would you frame that relationship between this one and the one you're now working on?
I mean, to me, it is continuing the pattern of growth of the film, beyond, because it started small, and to me, the natural development of when I began learning process philosophy and applying what I learned to what I already knew and depicted in that film, the unanswered questions were these primordial and consequent and superjective natures. Those are things that I didn't even touch on. And that's where, to me, it was the new starting point and the springboard for this is the next step to explore. And
All
maybe
right.
psychological for the first one.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. So anybody else, this is we have a little bit of time, actually about 2 minutes and not much more.
Yeah, just one more minute. We have to transition.
One more minute.
Yeah.
Maybe we have no more minutes.
I have a question, a quick
Go
one.
ahead.
Have you thought of, or have you used other media to do this kind of work, other than animation? And I'm thinking specifically like material. I'm working on an environmental art piece that basically dirt gathering mass and turning into things and interactions occurring and all of that. Have you done anything like that, or know someone know of work like that? That would be really interesting.
Yeah, I haven't tried that. I've been painting, animation, music. I have for me, there's a part of it where I really want like this precise communication of like, I have something in my mind and I'm like, how do I get that out as accurate as possible? And so that's part of why I choose my mediums.
That's great. Well, I'd love to talk to you more later. I know time is short. I'd love your advice on what we're doing. I'm also Whiteheadian, and so would definitely love to go on both channels, both the work and the thought about it in the future. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
Thanks, Rosalind. You just sparked an idea.
That's right.
Lauren.
And we will keep the conversation going for sure. And that is one of the main reasons that we're holding this session. So we're going to transition now to doing our participatory arts, our response, our creative response, right? So with these sessions, we want to create a call and response, right? So let's consider Kaeti's film as a call, and now we are going to share a response. So with this, we are going to do a different version of social presencing theater. If anyone is familiar with that, it's an embodiment practice about creating gestures, and the gestures are meaningful. It can be meaningful to you, it can be meaningful to others, but what matters is that it's a gesture. You're embodying the meaning. For social presencing theater, we use our whole bodies, but we're going to do a little innovation today and use just our hands. right? We saw how important hands were in her film. And I also want to just highlight how Rudolf Steiner speaks very much about the hands, and particularly in the 4th grade curriculum, when I was doing that with my kids, we focus on how incredible the hands are. And my younger daughter at the time picked up this phrase, you know, like, oh, you're such a cute kitty, or whatever she was pretending to be at the moment, or like, what a little fish you are. And she would say, no, I'm not a fish. I have hands. Because she heard how important it was that we have hands. So I'm going to put in the chat here is, you know, a resource about social presencing theater if you all want to read about it later. Here's our fun innovation today. We're going to start with one gesture, okay? And then we're going to move to a second gesture. In the traditional form, the first gesture is embodying present reality, something that is stuck, something that is a challenge, something that is maybe overwhelming or burdening. And we're going to use this idea of the process of becoming. Let's embody with our hands first those shadow hands. Find a gesture with our hands that is the shadow hands, right? Something that is in current reality, right? But that is something that's challenging. And then we're going to shift into the future hands. Something as Jay was, or as you all were saying about prehension, that we're going to feel the presence of something else, right? We're going to allow that to feel it in our bodies. And then we're going to create a second gesture with our hands. And to bring this even more deeply into our sense being, if you could also find a word or a phrase that describes this first gesture that you're creating. And for everyone who wants to be seen, go ahead and make it really clear. And we're going to take a screenshot of your hands image. If you don't want to be a part of it, then just go ahead and turn your cameras off and you won't be seen. Okay, so we'll begin our process, this process of becoming. So take a few deep breaths, feeling your body, and then just, you know, letting the hands move however they want. Remembering, imagining this animated film from Kaeti, and remembering those shadow hands. And just let your body, let the wisdom, the organic, ecological wisdom of the body show a gesture. And when the body's done, it'll just come to a still point and think of a word or a phrase that goes along with this shadow hand. Okay. Jared, can you take a screenshot of us? Okay, it's done. All right, so now, and remember your phrase. Now just, again, letting it flow. Got a bunch, okay. All right, now letting it flow into a second gesture, future hands. Inviting, welcoming those future hands. Again, at some point, it's just gonna come to a holding place and think about that second phrase. What articulates this second gesture? of the future hands, sensing the presence of the future coming into the now. And when you're done, just hold it there and we'll get a couple pictures. And then just take a moment to reflect. Think about that first gesture and the second gesture. And then write in the chat the two phrases. And yes, you can watch the video later. So my first gesture was about reaching to grasp, was what came to me. And then the second one was an invitation. And then so you can just put in the chat the two phrases of your two gestures. Yeah. You guys got it with either a dash or a slash mark. Yep. Excellent. So Thomas was nodded and then connection. Katie's was held back and then finding space. Well, see, we were similar, grasping and then tension. Wow. So the value of an embodied practice within the arts is that we are bringing the imaginal into the physical world. So just as Katie was talking about how she had these ideas and images in her imagination, and then she had a schedule and a time when she had to sit down and create it and do all the different levels of the technique and technology. This is also, embodiment practice is also a very important wisdom technology for bringing the greater organic wisdom that is all around us and bringing it into the now through our bodies. And the more that we do this, the more that we exercise that awareness of that interiority, and then the levels of complexity that we are nested within, those communities within communities. And we start to give voice, right? We want to give a phrase to each gesture, right? Because we are giving voice to the voiceless. We are giving a resounding call, right? And then a response to the call.
It seems that it's before language. The somatic movement couldn't be a language-based experience. I needed to go into what the expression was that was not in language. So it was distinctly two different events. It was like a different part of me had to open up to find a word. And the word felt dense and less imaginative. Like I didn't like finding a word. I liked the experience of it wordlessly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You're so right. Yeah. And that's almost like Katie's art, right? She was bringing together so many levels, right, to express so much. And we're trying to do the same. Yeah.
And I think that's like the prehension where it's so many feelings, but then once you can actually have them be intellectual, that's when your language comes in. But they are different processes.
Right.
Hey, Katie, could you say a little more about what you meant by the shadow hands? Would you?
Yeah. So that is, rather than calling it past hands, you know, it is like your shadow following you. It is that sort of, this is you know, what's reaching back and bringing memories. And so in the, like where we have the 40 bodies, and those are all of those past actual occasions, it's the shadow hands that are only reaching back there and pulling something up to the front again, whereas the future hands are always forward to the potentials. And that's where it doesn't necessarily have to be back and front, but a lot of people visualize and understand the past and the future in relation to, you know, the front and the back of their bodies.
It was the shadow could be nourishing too. Is this correct?
Mm-hmm.
That was where that's where I was. I know we were kind of supposed to think of us as maybe stuck or fixed or something, but I actually felt like it was okay.
Yeah.
But I was curious what you had in mind. And is it the past as past no matter what?
Yeah, that's kind of it. And it, you know, it has everything. And so that's where it can be like, this is all good, or it's not.
Mhm.
And that's where it, you know, in sort of the function and the movement and how I animated it, I had the shadow hands be a little bit more like molasses like, and it's a little bit less conscious and sentient, where, because you can't always control what memories may suddenly surface if something, you know, sparks your memory, whereas a lot of your future is intentional and it is decision making. And that's part of, to me, the way I depicted them with the future hands were all very intentional, and kind of the colors were made up of all of the colors of the other parts. And so it is like it needs everything to move forward and then have that, you know, decision, that satisfaction. It is like that conscious yearning, whereas the shadow hands are a little bit acting on their own, a little bit of, you know, just what your mind is going to do with the sum total of what is available.
I see, yes.
I love that contrast. Thank you, Katie. Well, we are coming to the end of our hour. I want to close up our time here, and I want to let you all know that we will keep this Zoom room open if you want to stay and chat with Katie, our featured artist of the month. And we will also have a chance for you to, we'll share the link so you can see the video again. And on our community website in Mighty Networks, I'll share the link there. I want to encourage you all to explore some of this art yourself. Maybe you can do some of the stop motion animation with hands, some of the painting techniques that Katie was exploring. Also, you can continue this practice of the embodiment of with the hands, the gestures of the hands that we explored just a tiny bit of today. Any of this creative response, we would love for you to post onto the site. You will see that there is an event of Katie's presentation here, and then you can post your responses there. We can keep the conversation going in asynchronous time. If you want to do the two hand gestures and take pictures of your two gestures with the phrases, you can post those there. And we would love to, see everyone's gestures. I will also be collecting all of our responses and putting our collective poetry in there. So again, thank you all for joining us in our inaugural session of our SPARKS Arts Collective. And even though we have come to the end of our session, the creativity does not end here. So please share your creative response art, and as well as any comments, questions, insights. Katie is very active on our SPARKS site, so she will be sure to answer your questions and responses. And if you have not joined the Mighty Networks community site, the link is there in the chat. And a reminder to you all that our participation is an intricate aspect of the creative advance into novelty. So thank you for joining us today and for participating in creating our beautiful response art. And thank you, Kaeti, for being our very first featured artist.
And thank you all.